everybody. For those of you who don't know, this is Danny and Lauren Perez's first episode with us. And everybody knows them as the Radikals, and they're wonderful. And it's going to be a great show. So, on behalf of All Access Network, myself, and everybody who has podcasts or not, welcome, guys. And you're going to have a great show. Here we go.
Throughout history, humanity has been drawn to the unknown. Are these merely legends and folklore? Or could they be clues to mysteries we have yet to understand? Join us as we search for answers where science, history, and the supernatural meet. This is Creepy Chronicles.
And we're live. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome to Creepy Chronicles, our first episode. And so what is Creepy Chronicles, Lauren?
Oh, it's in the title.
Yeah, it's
creepy, and we're chronicling things.
History, mystery, legends and lore,
Mm.
and fact. And it's just weekly, or no, not weekly, excuse me. Every so often, we're going to pop on here and talk about various things. But tonight is our first episode, and it's very special because it's a place that I really love. Lauren's been there once before. I went back in the 90s. Lauren went there once, but she went in the middle of the night. So we're talking about American Stonehenge, and we're going to be talking with Dennis Stone.
Yes.
So Lauren, who is Dennis Stone? Tell us a little bit.
So Dennis Stone is the president
Everybody.
of the America's Stonehenge. He graduated from Daniel Webster College in 1977 with a degree in aviation management.
That's awesome.
He was a full-time commercial pilot for over 35 years before he retired in 2016. American Stonehenge was opened to the public in 1958 from Dennis's father, Robert. And he's been involved with the American Stonehenge for most of his life, and always has had a fascination with the archaeology and archaeoastronomy. I totally just messed that one up.
No, it worked. I know exactly what you're talking about. Everyone knows. But yeah, this guy, I mean, if you've never been to American Stonehenge, you need to go. I mean, it is just, you can feel whatever it is in the air when you get there. It's just, it's amazing. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest for tonight, Dennis.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your first episode.
Thank you so much.
Very happy and humbled to be here. Thank you.
We're really proud to have you as our first guest.
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about how you came into dealing with American Stonehenge.
Well, I think my last name probably was part of it, being a stone, and everybody wonders whether we changed our name or not. But it goes back to 1955. My dad, Robert, he was a AT&T Bell Labs engineer for about 30 years. And it was a fairly new job for him back then. He had just got out of the Coast Guard. He was up in Canada with the U.S. Coast Guard for a couple of years, right up in Labrador, right near where the Vikings landed at Lonzo Meadows. So
that's amazing.
But he didn't know about it at the time. He was there in the early 50s. I think it was 1960 they established that. But it was always something he was fascinated by. And he certainly would have taken the trip across the I think it's the part of the St. Lawrence Seaway. We were up there 2 years ago at Lonzo Meadow. It's an amazing site. And we could look across and see Newfoundland where he was. And he would have gone over there and checked it out. But it was on a Friday night in the summer of 1955. And at about 7:30, and he used to tune in a local AM station out of Boston. It's still one of the biggest AM stations in New England. And it was a show called Yankee Yarns. And the talk show host was a gentleman from Maine originally named Alton Hall Blackington. and he had the show on at 7:30 on Friday nights, and my dad used to listen to it. He used to listen to it, I think, up in Labrador because of the skipway on AM. You know, you can pick it up at certain times of the day, and that's how he stayed in touch with back in New England. You know, by listening to that station. They didn't have the internet and social media and all that, so he used to listen to at least to the station up in Canada. You know, in the Coast Guard. It was a show he really enjoyed. On that particular night, though, they were talking about these strange stone ruins located in southern New Hampshire in the town of North Salem. And he lived in the town of Derry, New Hampshire, which is only 7 miles away. And it kind of fascinated him, the topic, number one, being a mystery of all these stone ruins, of who built them, you know, why are they there, what were they used for. But the fact that he only lived a few miles away and never heard of this place, and here it is on, you know, one of New England's biggest radio stations, and it was also syndicated on other stations across the Northeast, that particular show. That town, and he was just waiting to have his hair cut. And he picks up a magazine to look at just to kill some time. And as he's flipping through it, it was a New Hampshire Profile magazine. And as he's looking through it, all of a sudden he sees pictures of these stone ruins, and it's the title of this place. It was called the North Salem Stone Ruins, or whatever it was. We still have the magazine today. And he's looking at it, saying, oh my gosh, this is what was on the radio just the other day, you know, a couple of days later, you know. And he was kind of blown away by the coincidence. And when he saw the pictures, it just really, you know, really got interested in it. And so he said to the barber's name was Warren Haywood, and he owned the barber shop. And he said, hey, can I borrow this? And the barber goes, well, how old is that? He goes, well, it's 1952. It's 3 years old. He goes, take it. You can keep it. So that weekend at my aunt and uncle's in that same town of Derry, about 10 people playing cards on a Saturday evening. And I was about a year and a half old at the time. My dad brought the magazine with him because he was so fascinated by this thing. He passed it around at some point during the card game, and nobody knew what it was either. You know, though everybody's looking at the pictures, looking at the story, going, oh, I don't know. We never heard of it. That was until it got to my aunt and uncle, my mom's sister and her husband. And it was a husband that first recognized it and said, wait a minute. We used to go down to that place on our bicycles when they were dating back in the 1930s, you know. And so that was kind of cool, you know. My dad's like, wow. He goes, hey, do you think you could find the place, you know? And they're like, wow, it's been 20 years. It wasn't open to the public in the 1930s, and it still wasn't in the 1950s. There were no road signs. There's no Google Earth, no nothing, you know. So that Sunday morning, the four of them decided to take a ride around North Salem, New Hampshire, see if they could, you know, find the place, you know. So they drove around. I guess I stayed with Grandma, and I had my aunt's son. He was my first cousin. He was just a couple months older than me. We stayed with Grandma and Grandpa probably. So they drove around North Salem trying to find this place, and eventually found a road that looked kind of familiar, and they parked the car. They walked a half a mile up the hill in the woods, trespassing basically. And eventually they came upon the site that my aunt and uncle had seen, you know, 20 years prior to that, and that my dad had seen in the paper and everything, in the magazine. So they walked around the site. My dad climbed under the chain link fence. If you might remember that when you're there, it's like a 6-foot chain link fence with barbed wire.
Yep.
And that fence has been there almost 90 years now. The first researcher put that up in 1930. Yeah, William Goodwin put that up in 1937 to protect the site. He was from Connecticut. He's part of the Goodwins of Hartford, very famous family.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they were part of the J.P. Morgan family. In fact, that was his second cousin. J.P. Morgan was his second cousin. But Goodwin was a fascinating guy. Anyway, went to St. Paul's prep school, high school up in Concord, New Hampshire. Went to Yale University for a while. Then he ended up in the insurance company all across Seattle, San Francisco, and he ended up in Columbus, Ohio. And he really interesting guy. But when he retired in the early 30s, he heard about our site, and from somebody in Seattle, 3,000 miles away, go, you got to check out. Some of the other New England ruins is what he heard of first. He goes, in your area around Hartford, you know, in that greater area, there are some stone structures that I've been reading about in Seattle. You know, you have to check them out. And after he started checking them out, he learned about our site, actually, just a short time later. And they visited at 36. He bought the site, 37, put the chain link fence up with a barbed wire on it to keep people out of there and protect it. And that's the fence my dad climbed under and disappeared for quite a while, while the rest of them just stayed outside wondering what he was doing in there, you know. So I guess in the 30s, my aunt and uncle must have been there just before the fence, or if it was after the fence, they probably climbed under it too, but they didn't want to do that at that point. And when he came back out, my dad was blown away by the site. He just couldn't believe the chambers, the structures. It was so unique. It was huge stone slabs. It was kind of mind-boggling to him, as he would put it. And he mentioned to the three of them, he goes, I'd like to get involved with this place somehow. I have a fascination of this kind of thing. Maybe I could get involved with research, study. Maybe someday, we could get involved with opening it up to the public. And because my mom said to him, "You got rocks in your head," because at that time, we had a new home that they actually were building themselves. My dad had a new job at AT&T Bell Labs. My sister was on her way. She hadn't been born yet, so she was coming along too. And my dad was also attending college at night. So he had all those things going on. He just didn't really need anything else to do. So, yeah, my mom wasn't exactly thrilled by the whole idea of that. But for the next 3 years, he eventually met the owner of the site, who had been willed the site by Goodwin. Goodwin died in 1950, and he willed the site to a gentleman from Massachusetts named Malcolm Pearson. And my dad worked out during the 1955 to 57, they worked out a lease agreement so my dad could actually open it up as a attraction, museum. And in 1958, on the summer solstice, coincidentally, they had a soft opening. And then around July 11th, I always get the 2 days mixed up, either 11th or 12th of July, 1958, they actually opened the museum up to the public for the very first time. And then before that, again, it was always in private hands, going back to actually to the behavioral proprietors back in 1672. It's always been in private hands, and there was Native American land, of course, and you go back earlier. So yeah, we opened to the public, and we've been open almost 70 years now. So that's how I got involved with it. I had to, I was there at the beginning, and I never left. And now I appreciate it more than I did when I was a little kid. It was fun playing in the stone ruins, but the appreciation, I enjoyed it. I kind of loved it, but the appreciation, I think, of the place and has gone up over the years. And it's kind of a family run business, and we are a state historic site. We made that in 1970. And we had staff that still come back and visit us from the 1960s, and I talked, the guy that opened up our very first astronomical alignment, I stay in touch with him all the time. He was working there in 63 through 68. He became a nuclear engineer, put the 2 reactors on the USS Nimitz, which is still out there. They're going to decommission that aircraft carrier. But if you're into the Tic Tac, David Fravor, which, by the way, he lives down the street here in Windham, New Hampshire. I think he's from Ohio. He was living in San Diego during his career, for the Nimitz and probably elsewhere. And it turns out he lives in Windham, New Hampshire, which is one of these chambers are in Windham too. One of our stone structures is in that town. But our guy, his name is Warren Martell, and very, very smart, intelligent. And my parents knew that when they hired him in 63. He was 15 years old. What a smart guy. He started clearing out the first avenue for the winter solstice sunset in 1965 using an axe. 800 feet of trees they had to clear. Wow. But he quickly, a neighbor across the street, he lived near our property, a guy named Dr. Kellett, he actually went over and borrowed his Homelight chainsaw, he told me recently, because he said the axe was just too slow. So he went up there, they got a chainsaw. He goes, I got one just like it today, except it has an automatic oiler in it. He goes, it's the same chainsaw from 1960. So he started clearing it, and he took the very first photographs in 1967 of the sunset. And he lives in France in the winter with his wife. He met her in the he was in the nuclear industry in Newfoundland, Canada. He was in France. He was in China for a while. He was all over the United States. And then he ended up in Japan, in Osaka. And he was getting ready to retire, go back to Charlotte, North Carolina, Westinghouse, I believe, retire. Oh, the Fukushima mess went up, and he stayed on that project with 4 other team members for the next couple of years till he retired. He was actually so his bookends are the USS Nimitz and the Fukushima disaster. And he lives in an island in Maine in the summer, so he'll be heading back, very shortly. And he visits us because his kids live nearby here. But we have other people too from the 60s that used to be guides or whatever, or researchers, and they still visit us. The ones that are still with us, they still come up and visit us. So it's kind of a nice thing too.
It's understandable. I mean, the place, like I said, it has a magic essence to it. It's something. My first experience was as a child. I would say probably 1978, episode 2 of In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, and it was just like, I'm a child, and I'm like, this is real. Oh my God, this is amazing. And I always said one day I would go there. And then after graduating in high school in the 90s, One day I was like, you know what? I have nothing to do. Let's head up to Salem and checked it out. And in the gift shop at the time, they had little 3.5-inch floppy drives, discs, and it had all this stuff on American stuff. I still have it. It's in the garage. And
that's a piece of history right there now.
Yeah, right. And it had all the layout and the alignments and all this stuff. And it's just like, now, how does one figure out the alignments? Like how did you realize the solstice stone is a solstice stone?
Well, even going back to the 30s with William Goodwin and his research team, they knew that the stones were out. It looked like big arrowheads, and these are out in the woods at that time because it was a very thick forest that had grown up over the centuries there. And by the time my dad got there and started walking in the woods too, along with other researchers, they realized that these stones were out there. They're kind of peculiar. They're like stones that are shaped. They look like a very large arrowhead, several feet tall, and they're located a few hundred feet from the main site. They began to wonder, could they have any significance at all? And what significance would they be? You know, are they a burial marker or are they something else? We just had no idea. Well, in 1965, the book Stonehenge Decoded by Gerald Hopkins came out, and it was a hit. CBS, because of that book, CBS got very interested and did a documentary called, I believe it's The Mysteries of Stonehenge, and they put it on CBS. Because back in those days, we had the 3 networks, and everybody community watched, you know, and what did you watch last night? I kind of miss those old days. Now you can stream everything, which is very convenient and cool, but nobody really watching the same thing, you know. Back then, everybody. So I go to school, you know. It's like, oh, we saw the show Stonehenge in England and all that. It was pretty cool. Well, that got my dad very interested, seeing that Stonehenge, you know, who was aligned with the sun and moon, you know, and possibly a computer to predict, you know, eclipses, you know, with they actually were tracking the 18.5-year lunar cycle, the yearly movements of the sun. And if you follow the moon, you can actually predict eclipses, according to some researchers and professional astronomers, basically. And so he got the book quickly after I think how he heard about it was probably the TV show, and the book was probably something he got right after the TV show. And they started thinking, are these aligned with the sun or moon possibly, you know? And so that's how it began. And we knew that when I mentioned the winter solstice monolith was to the south of the main site, it would be in about the right angle out of true north, if you would, where the sun would set. It was kind of a hunch. It was kind of a guess, maybe speculation, that's what that was. So what we had to do is actually clear out the trees. Today, you can use Sunseeker. A lot of apps on your phone. You can actually, no matter what the weather, you can bring Sunseeker up to our site, even if it's cloudy, and you can see where the sun's setting over the stone, even if you can't see it because it's cloudy, rainy, snow. You can do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and say, oh, I can, on my phone, I can see where the sun sets on this. And you go back in time, too, because our site, obviously, was set up at a different time. So when Warren, the gentleman I mentioned, opened up that alignment, he had a couple people helping him, too. But December of 1967, he went up with his camera, and he got the first 2 photographs of it. And there were cirrus clouds, the high cirrus clouds, but he could still see the brightness of the sun through it. And I put one of those pictures in my new book, you know, and I was surprised because he told me this only about 5 or 6 years ago. Hey, Dennis, you know, on an email, he goes, or we do it by messenger, actually. He goes, hey, I got 2 pictures from 1967. I said, you got what? Because my best recollection was 1970. That's the first time I saw it. And Warren was working on the USS Nimitz, as I mentioned. So he drove up to see his folks in the Christmas of 1970, and he drove his 58 Bug-Eye Triumph up with his wife. He got married to her in '69, the year before that, and we went to the wedding. But anyway, he drove that up in the winter. I don't know how warm that was, but he drove it up from Newport News, Virginia, and he spent the holidays with his family. We met him on the winter solstice in his parents' yard. The land abuts our whole property. And he had built a wooden snowmobile a few years before when he was a kid. He built it out of an old Polaris. And this must have been in the mid-'60s. He built this wooden snowmobile. He had like an IV for the gas tank. In any event, it was pretty cool looking. But he started the old thing up and had a couple of horsepower, probably a lawnmower engine or something, I don't know. And I have pictures of that snowmobile. So he sent me those recently because I hadn't seen it since 1970. I said,
oh, that's so cool.
I took that, recycled it into other projects. I said, you did? I said, I wish we had that. We put it in our museum today because that's how he broke the trail through fresh snow. It snowed about probably between a foot and 18 inches of snow. I know it was up close to my knees. So what he did is he broke the trail a half a mile through the woods up to the top of the hill where the winter solstice sunset monolith is. And we stood about halfway between where the main site is and the stone itself. And it was a beautiful day. And there was a few clouds in the sky, and a couple of them, as we're getting close, kind of got in front of the stone, you know, and then they moved out. And as the sun was coming down, we saw it very clearly, and the sun set right on it. And we used to sell those, a sequence of the sun setting on it. We had them in slides. We had them in a photo albums you could buy. If you remember, a lot of people we still sell postcards, by the way, but you get like a little mini album of postcards you could buy too. We used to sell those, and the strips of slides when people used to look at slides. And so the difference between his picture in 67 and ours was actually you could see the sun clearly, and his, you could see the brightness of the sun. But it really blew my mind that he had taken pictures 3 years earlier, and I don't even know if my dad knew that. He may have, you know, he just forgot to mention it or something. I don't know. But that's how the astronomy began. And once we saw the sun was pretty close, actually it set right over the stone. But then the other question is, where do you stand? You have to have 2 points like a gun sight.
Right.
You can't just have 1 point. So we weren't really sure where the astronomical center was until we did more work up there, and eventually established it was just north of the sacrificial table. And that was by the early 70s. And what was there originally were 2 cairns, 2 beautiful piles of stones side by side. And Mr. Goodwin had them diagrammed by a guy named Roscoe Whitney, his foreman. Actually, was an MIT engineer who did beautiful diagrams of the site, cross-section, profile, plan view, nice diagrams. And good. He was there in the late 30s. And then another foreman came along around 1941 from Notre Dame College, actually, in Indiana. Excuse me. So we have those diagrams, and they put them in his book. And Goodwin wrote 4 books. And the book called The Ruins of Great Ireland and New England, which we used to sell, came out in 1946. It shows those 2 piles of stones there. We call cairns. And he didn't know what he was doing at that time back in the 30s, but he thought that there were just he thought they were connected to the oracle chamber, the biggest structure we have on the site. And you've been into the oracle chamber. It has like 5 closets, like a big stone bed, a speaking tube, shaped like the letter Y. If you kind of look down, it's stripped off the roof. It's about 30 feet long, and then has like a 20-foot easterly branch on it, about 18 feet, I guess it is. It's an amazing structure. He thought that these 2 piles of stones were beehive chambers, like you see in Ireland, the beehive dome structures. And he thought they were connected to the oracle chambers north end. The north end of the oracle chambers where that chimney flue is. If you remember the end, there's like a light coming through the roof. So they were not connected, actually. And there's actually an underground stone drain between them, kind of separating them, too. And at that point, he decided that they were just waste piles of stone, I guess. And he started using a tripod of wood with a winch. And we have pictures of that, too, cranking up the stones from those cairns, putting them on the ramp in front of the sacrificial table. So he recycled them, and he basically destroyed the astronomical center. We didn't know that's about 40 years after he did it, though, you know. So we have the photographs, we have the diagrams, and also in his book, he's talking about him a little bit. He had no idea the significance of what he did. It's easy in hindsight to look back and criticize it, but back then he just didn't know, you know.
Yeah. At the time,
So yeah, those 2 points are where the wooden platform is that was put up in 1975. And in the late 60s, we kept working on the astronomical alignments. We started clearing a few more. And by the early 70s, you realized you really needed to have everything surveyed professionally. You can't, you know, we had a 1950. Yeah, you needed the accuracy. You know, we needed a professional survey to come in and do the work. So in 73, we hired Beverly Pearson Associates of Derry, New Hampshire. And the son, Charlie Pearson, is still alive today. And he's the one that actually came down with his team and began surveying the astronomical alignments. And because it's expensive to do that, we had to spread it out over a couple of years. We didn't have GoFundMe and all those things back then.
Right.
We had to budget each year for that. Yeah. And so he would come down each year, and he would survey, go back, crunch the numbers, give us his information. I got a little bit of a cold coming on, so I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Gwen, can you bring up a picture of the solstice stone? And we have one on file. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
So that's a real picture there. We took a few years ago. Almost looks like it's an artist, you know. That was taken probably about 6 or 7 years ago, we just did a forest management program starting in the fall of 2019 up to 2021, the spring of 21. We did it during the wintertime. We had the whole hilltop thinned using fellow bunches and skidders, and with a licensed forester, and they opened up all these alignments, and that one's much more open. But that's the clearing that Warren Martell made from the main site about 500 feet out to this stone, and then probably another 300 or 400 feet beyond the stone where the hill starts to go down into what we call the Spigot Valley. There's a big valley. And the Spigot River's down there too. And so that is the winter solstice sunset monolith with the sun setting on it on December 20th or 21st, depending on what year it was. That might have been about 6 years ago, I think, probably. And that's how the others two look. We have about 57 alignments with the sun, moon, and stars today. And that survey work actually was sent to the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in the fall of 1977, and they analyzed the data. And it was a woman named Shoshana Rosenthal, who I found out just recently had done the work on Gerald Hopkins' book, the work that he put into his book in 1965. She was there in the 60s doing his analysis with 2 more teammates, and she was the lead. And she did our work about 12 years later in 1978. And she said, well, if these stones were used for astronomical purposes, they would work about 1800 BC, plus or minus about 250 years, due to the Earth's tilt. It's a 41,000-year cycle called the obligity cycle, and the Earth moves about a minute every century. And it's just a back and forth motion of the Earth's axis. And so you'd have to go back in time almost 4,000 years.
That's incredible.
And that came out in the spring of 78. And that date aligned with one of our 16 carbon datings taken since 1967. And that was 1971 next to the chamber and ruins. They got 3 different carbon datings. The one in 69 was almost 3,000 years old. And the one in 1971 was 1800 BC plus or minus. So it came out with the same thing astronomically as with the charcoal dating from 71. So that was an interesting thing too. They both corresponded. Yeah.
So,
and she said we have 24 star alignments, by the way, and we only knew we had the true north alignment, which is with Polaris today. And you know, the Earth goes through that precessional cycle too, over 25,920. So 4,000 years ago, the axis was pointing close to Thuban or Alpha Draconis, and that's part of Draco. Some people call it a dragon, some people call it a serpent. And for instance, the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, which we've been to, they suggest that Draco inspired the Native Americans when they built that, possibly. And I think that may have been inspirational in the Northern Hemisphere. You can see Draco today. And I think that may have been inspirational. The Egyptians were looking at the North Star too at Draco, I guess around 4,600 years ago. And so our people would have been looking up in the sky and seeing Draco, the whole body going around the star Thuban during the course of an evening, kind of, you know. So that's the astronomical work on the site. It seems to show the site was set up almost 4,000 years ago. And today, again, we have about 57 alignments with the sun, moon, and stars, you know.
So are there any theories or hypotheses on like who actually did this? You know, because it's more than just an alignment. You've got chambers, you've got all these different things. I mean, why?
Yeah, we don't have any. No, there are a lot of opinions out there. There's a lot of speculation, and there's been all sorts of theories. You know, you look at the Native Americans first. They've been in New Hampshire about 13,000 years. New Hampshire Archaeological Society, which my dad was a member, my uncle was a vice president, and our manager James, who's been with us for about 8 years. He's been working with a state archaeologist on a dig up in northern New Hampshire the last 2 summers, and also doing lab work up in Concord, New Hampshire. The lab is. But you're talking about our archaeologist that's on the front cover of my magazine. She was the president of the New Hampshire Archaeological Society, and she was with us for over 30 years. She's 93 now. She lives in Florida. She's retired. Only about 3 years ago, she retired and left us, you know, and she visited us once since. And so there's a site in Keene, New Hampshire, which is on the west coast, pretty close to the Connecticut River.
Yes.
You know where Keene is, yeah.
You know where Keene is, in the the university over there. That there's a site over there about 13,000 years old, which is surprising because the Ice Age had quite left then. it would have been pretty hard conditions. So New Hampshire, we get a question all the time. The site's 4,000 years old. Was anybody living here 4,000 years ago? And yes, it does go back into the woodland, the archaic, and then it goes back to the paleo, which is 10,000 and before. And there's actually, I think, a paleo site up in, what's the name? It's up near Lake Winnipesaukee. I think it's Ashland, New Hampshire, I think, in that area. There's a site that's paleo too, almost 10,000 years, over 10,000 years. So yeah, we have people living here then. But because of a lot of data seems to suggest there may have been old pre-Viking, pre-Columbian visitations from the Old World. That's been a big top hot potato, if you will, for many, over a century. Did people come here before Columbus? Were people here before the Vikings, and it's still not resolved today. There's people on both sides of the fence. Mainstream usually says, no, nobody was here before Columbus, although the Vikings were up in Canada, 500 years before that. But there's other pieces of evidence suggesting that maybe people were visiting the New World from the Old World across the Pacific, as well as across the Atlantic. And so
what side of the fence do you sit on?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think possibly people did come across before, before the Vikings too. I think the jury's still out. I don't know if I'll be around long enough for them to find hard evidence to prove that. But there are inscriptions that have been found from here all the way down to South America. There seem to be Old World, Phoenician, Libyan, Celtic, other Semitic scripts too, that have been found all across North America, going into Central and South America. The Parahiba stone down in Brazil was found in 1872 by some slaves, and it was so cool. They recognized something strange, and they drew it to somebody's attention. But it wasn't until years later that it was looked at by Cyrus Gordon, I believe it was, and I think he was a member of my dad's group, and he had identified it, I think, and don't quote me, I think he identified that one as Phoenician, and it. Because it's only 1,500 miles from Africa to Brazil, I guess, and there are ocean currents and wind currents that favor that kind of route, like what Columbus did, I think possibly Old World. And then the big question comes up, what did the Native Americans, what involvement did they do? Again, it goes back to 100%. They were the ones that built everything. Or there were other people coming over here, and they may have somehow, assimilated or work together, perhaps. These are some of the different theories going on. And a book called Manitou came out in 1989 by James Mavor Jr., an MIT engineer who actually developed the deep sea submersible Elvin, Kellogg Marine Corporation, which is just retiring now. That's Elvin, who came out in '64. He was a brilliant gentleman. But his passion was archaeology, and he dug in Akrotiri. He dug on that famous site over, I believe it's in Crete, I think it is. I think Crete. It's a famous dig, and he was like one of the leads on that. So he's an engineer, MIT, Woods Hole. He worked for Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and with Byron Dix, who did a lot of work on our site. He was from Vermont. He was kind of an aerospace engineer too. They were both engineers. And my dad was an engineer too. A lot of engineers involved with this stuff. And they wrote a book, Manitou, and they really lean towards Native American. They say, however, it does seem to be some evidence of Old World participation in these structures. It's just that there's so many of them, and there's so much work that would require to build these. You have to quarry stones, you have to dress them or shape them, you have to transport them, you have to build these structures. And with over 800 locations from Quebec and Ontario, Canada, down to Virginia, of similar sites, including your state down in Connecticut. There's just so much there that it would take a large population to build these, or if it was a smaller population, it would take many more years to build it. You have fewer people, but it just said realistically, it looks like it may have been Native Americans involved this whole project. But if you talk to mainstream archaeologists, I grew up with hearing from mainstream that there are no ancient stone ruins in the Northeast. Native Americans used stones for tools, utensils, weapons, sometimes burials, a few piles and things like that, cairns. But they didn't build all these stone chambers, standing stones, all the serpentine walls. They didn't. That's not their work. So it has to be some crazy farmers that built our site, is what we've been told. He was a crazy farmer. He was actually a shoemaker, but he wasn't. I don't think he was crazy either. But you'd have to be crazy to. 106 acres, and it's all covered with walls, standing stones, monoliths, as I mentioned. We have a couple cairns, but we have 16 serpentine walls we've identified, we believe, since 2016. We think they're serpentine walls.
Holy
And
God.
again, they have a head, body, and tail.
Mm.
27 feet, and the biggest one we have, we think, is 2,550 feet. It's the
Oh my
Watch House
goodness.
Serpent. Yeah, it's 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet bigger than the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, which, again, we visited that, I think, 3 years ago in 2023. Yes, 2023, we saw the Site Mound. We went up to Chillicothe, then we went up to the Newark Mounds. And I think it was after the Site Mound that we were heading north off the Ohio River. We saw the Serpent Mound in Peebles, Ohio. Fantastic, it's 1,350 feet long, built out of earth on a stone platform, part of it, with a wide mouth. And we do have a wide mouth serpent at our site too. And it's similar to one in Kentucky. There's one in Kentucky with a wide mouth like that too, just a big wide mouth. Except the one in Ohio seems to have an egg or something in its mouth. It looks like,
Wild.
So cool, so cool. Yeah.
As we keep talking here, we're going to open up the phone lines. Anyone wants to call in, ask a question, but we're going to keep going. So, like, what do you think the greatest archaeological find to date is at the location?
Well, that's a tough one,
Yeah.
Right now, my fascination for 10 years has been the serpent walls, because until 2016, when I retired, I was working in America, flew for America. I hadn't heard of a stone wall shaped like a serpent anywhere. I've heard of serpent petroglyphs. I've heard of paintings on pottery with serpents. We've seen them in the Southwest. We've been to Mexico, Cuculcan, Quetzalcoatl, been Mexico City, Teotihuacan, all of that. We've been all over Mexico, a couple of different trips down there. But I never heard a stone wall that looked like a serpent. And I was riding my ATV towards where my dad used to live on the north side of the property. And one of our snowshoe trails, we open up the whole hill for snowshoeing in the winter, which people get an opportunity to see the whole 106 acres, Normally we keep you on about 16, which is probably what you saw when you both visited us. I saw this wall many times going to my dad's. He died in 1999. 2009, he passed away, 2009. And anyway, I was heading out that way in 2016. My son was living there by then. And I was probably just, heading over that way in my ATV. I looked at the wall again as I'd gone by it many times, and I just happened to catch it again out of the corner of my eye. And it was just the way the sun struck it. I said, well, it looks a little strange. And I said, looks like, I don't know, I'm going to go take a look at it. So I got off my ATV, walked about 65 feet over to it. There was some woods there, so you could still see it through the woods. And I got over to it. It was on a ridge of bedrock, which I hadn't really paid attention before. And it looked like it had this block head, like a head on one side, on the south side of it. It looked like a block head that actually had slipped from its original position. And then I noticed the body or the rest of the wall had tapered. I call it the body now, but to me, it was just a stone wall at that moment, tapering down maybe 30 feet to a flat stone that was rectangular, about 4 feet long, pretty big rectangular stone with rounded corners, sitting on the bed, on that outcropping of bedrock. The whole thing was sitting on it. And I kept looking back and forth, and I'm looking at it going, is that a head? Is this a body that tapers into that flat stone? And I walked around the whole thing. As you go on the other side of it, it drops off because it's on a ridge of bedrock. I had to walk down, and I'm looking back up at it going, this wall doesn't attach to any of the walls. Farmers' walls are usually fairly linear with some exceptions. They usually encircle big areas, and there's some exceptions to that, I know. This thing, it had a lot of flat slabs in it too. It did have some rounded field stones too, but it looked like a snake. And I'm looking at it going, oh my God, this looks like about a 30-foot snake here. It doesn't attach to anything. I was blown away by it.
Lauren didn't get to see any of that because when we went, it was a nighttime paranormal investigation. So she only got to go to the site. They're in the middle of the night. It was all flashlight for her.
Yeah, you wouldn't see a lot there. Yeah, if you would never see the serpent walls. In fact, during the daytime, you have to, because like that. My dad used to go out with a archaeoastronomer from Penn State, Dr. Winkler, back from around 97 or 80. He was joining us. He started in 64. He was an archaeoastronomer, and towards the end of his career at Penn State, he found out about us, I guess, or maybe he heard about us before, but he finally made contact around 97, I think it is. And then he started coming up in 98, 99, 2000, and my dad, and he would come up, drive all the way up in his Mercedes with his wife, whatever, and he would spend time with my dad, and I was flying, so I'd be on a 4-day flying trip, and my dad would talk to me in the evening or whatever. So, oh yeah, Dr. Winkler was up, a couple of days, and we went out and looked at the woods, and they were really studying the walls all over the hill. And my dad had an interest since the day he first saw the site, you know. But they were out there measuring walls, looking at the shape of walls and all of that. They never ever, and nobody else either, saw the serpentine thing until that one I saw. And they might have even seen this and didn't give it a lot of thought, you know. I don't know. So anyway, he died in 2001, unfortunately. But if you put out a 30-page paper all about the archaeoastronomy, he was getting into studying the 24 star alignments that were found back in 1978 by Shoshana Rosenthal. That work needed to be done because until he worked on it, nobody did really, and we didn't know what other star. But he died suddenly without completing his project. But they really looked at the walls a lot. So after that, I told some people about it and showed it to some people, and like, wow, that kind of doesn't look like a snake, but they didn't hear of any serpent wells either. In that summer 16, I found a couple more. One that's almost 140 feet. It's like 137 feet roughly. It's a big S-shaped serpent. It's out near the, not too far from the winter solstice sunset. It's in that area. We opened up that trail in 1970. We were walking by that very wall for decades until 2016 when my eyes were open a little more and other people were conscious of this too. And we hadn't heard of anything in North Stonington yet. We had nothing about anything else as far as California, none of that. And I found that big S-shaped one with a triangular boulder head. And the wall meandered. It had a couple of skin monoliths in it. One of them had fallen. One of the monoliths had fallen, though. And it ended with a boulder tail, all built on bedrock. You can see parts of it, the bedrock's where it's, in other parts, the dirt has come up next to the rocks, you know. And we found a couple more. And by 2017, I went to a meeting in Groton, Connecticut, the New England Antiquities Research Association, and they had their meeting there for the spring. And Markham Starr, the gentleman who wrote the book, Ceremonial Stonework of North Stonington, Connecticut, he had been there 30 years living, goes, I don't think there's a farmer's walls, all these structures and features, all these strange stonework. He goes, they're beautifully made, but farmers, their walls are pretty linear. And this area is hilly, rocky, swampy, full of rocks. You can graze some animals there, but it's terrible because even walking is difficult. But these stones are all over, even in my backyard. And you know, when I saw the book before he spoke, I'm looking through the 25 categories of the 8,000 structures, and one of them is the serpent walls. And my wife and I both stared at that. That was the first time we saw any of the serpent walls besides our site. I said, I think we got something going on, you know. And the other category were windows. We had found some of these beautiful windows. And so the book Manitou, I mentioned by Byron Dix and James Mavor Jr., they do talk about Martha's Vineyard, some of the stone ruins there. And one of the ones was windows. And they called them wind windows back in 1989. So they were already on it in 89, but we didn't pay attention. I read the book a couple times since 1989. That's the year my son was born. I remember reading. I never paid much attention to windows. I think they mentioned somewhere up in Vermont, they have a wall that reminded them of a serpentine shape. I'd have to go back and get the page and everything. So they're kind of on it. None of us paid attention, and I got to verify that serpentine thing, so please don't quote me on that. I just read the book 6 years ago, so I'm starting to think I've read it a few times, you know. And when I did my book, I started reading a lot of books over. They all discovered America from Charles Boland from 1961 or whatever. I started reading a lot of books over again so I could all this to refresh my memory. Research, study, and when I do my book, I can do the proper thing in it, you know. So these things are all pretty cool. And I'd say your state is again loaded with these, and just North Stonington alone, again, 8,000 structures in one town. You know, somebody should take that serious. Very serious, you know.
In our town here, every year they have a walk around here to the cairns. There's some ancient cairns around here.
Oh yes,
there are. Okay, you got the same thing.
We do have a caller. We're going to try to patch him in. I believe he's got a question for you. So.
Okay. Oh, great.
All right, caller, you're online. You there? Hello?
Is this the Creepy Chronicles show?
Hey, how's it going? Who do we have here?
What's up, guys? This is Adam, the historian ghost hunter from Upper Maine by Stephen Kingsville. I got a couple of questions for Dennis. Brand, what's going on, Mr. Stone? How are you?
Oh, thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you. I get to visit your establishment about 9-10 years ago or so. I had a couple of questions real quick, if you don't mind. The first question is, I don't know, maybe you said this already, I missed it, but does American Stonehenge line up technically right to the Stonehenge in England? Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. My son found that in 2012. He was in college on a break, and he happened to just go out on Google Earth, and he was going on various astronomical alignments, a true north one, and then he did the summer solstice sunrise. And he took that across New Hampshire and Maine, and then he went past, I think it goes just south of Prince, Nova Scotia. He took it across the ocean, just for kicks. And it came out in southern England. And then we got over southern England. We've been to Stonehenge with him a couple times, and he kind of knew roughly where it was, just so he blew up the scale. And as he kept blowing the scale up, all of a sudden he realized, yeah, this is kind of close to Stonehenge. I think Salisbury come up, and there's Andover, and all of a sudden Stonehenge. You're right. So Stonehenge appears, and it goes right to the one of the trilithons that's still intact at Stonehenge. And all I can say is, I thought, wow, that's a hell of a coincidence. That was my first impression. Some people don't believe in coincidences.
Tell me, man.
Yeah, and a hair stood up on my back. My dad had just passed away shortly before that, like a year, 2 years before. I said, boy, wouldn't he like to see that? It's just interesting, even if it's a coincidence. What the heck, and that's a great.
Verify it then. That's a real thing. I heard that on something I thought.
Yeah, that was on Scott Walter's show, America Unearthed, in 2013. Scott still does stuff. He was on America Unearthed, and then he went over to the Discovery Network. Yeah, so they premiered that on that in 2013. So
awesome.
You might have saw it on that. I don't know.
I've been dying to know that. I've been dying to find that out. And then I think I get you on Facebook, but I know you're busy, and I'm glad. This is great to call in. Congratulations on Danny and Lauren, real quick, for having their first podcast and having you as the opening guest. That's a hard bar to beat. One more question real quick, because I have been, and I remember the sacrifice slab got messed with by some hooligans a couple years back. But
it was,
the Oracle chamber, legit, like the Oracle would speak through it and would weigh the person guilty and put them, basically sacrifice them. That's how it went, right? And I'll hang up.
We don't.
Great show, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's great. Yeah, the speaking tube is interesting, and we found out after the vandalism, the actual pot that comes out under the table is actually looks like it widens. And we think it's for acoustical purposes, like a clarinet, or I just play a clarinet. But any of the musical instruments, they have like a trumpet or anything, it kind of widens. And we discovered that because part of it was damaged. And when we had to put it back together after that vandalism, we realized that it kind of goes through 6 feet, and then as it gets by the table where the sound would come out, if you would, it widens out like that. And in Goodwin's time, actually, there were 2 stone blocks. The exit was plugged with a stone, so you could not see that hole. And inside the Oracle chamber, that side of it was plugged. And a young guy named Paul, one of their workers back in the 30s, he was playing around in the Oracle chamber in 37, the first year, and he realized the rock was loose. So he went back to they had a wooden hut, and that hut ended up in Warren Martell's father's property. It's still there today. It was built in 1937. Wow. No, anyway, he went into that hut where it was a bunkhouse, and they would, they had like a little kitchenette. He got a knife, came out, wiggled at that stone, and there's a whole 6-foot tunnel. He thought it might be, and I think Goodwin and others saw, it's a weird closet, a very skinny, long closet, maybe something they stuck in there, like rod, who knows what it was used for. Right. The next year, they're working cleaning the table because the table was buried almost to the top with dirt that had accumulated over time. And they found it was sitting on 4 legs. And then when they got to that area where the tube comes out today, somebody noticed that the stonework looked like a square there, and so they pulled the stone out. It was loose, and they found that it was a complete tube. And somebody had put plugs to conceal it. And those 2 plugs, unfortunately, today are missing. They've been missing for almost 90 years, but that's a great question by the caller. That's wonderful. That speaking tube reminds me of Malta. Yeah, we went to Malta. We saw the same kind of holes in the walls, and I asked the guide in Malta, "What are those?" He goes, "That's where a priest or priestess would do would be an oracle, and they would speak through that. People would hear the voice." And we went to Greece. We went to Delphi too, and they're supposed to be the priestess oracles of Delphi. And the other thing I'll mention about that is we have a earthquake fault line across the entire hilltop. And in Delphi, they had that too. And they say that they think gases came out when that was in use over thousands of years ago. There was gases coming through the cracks, altering the state of mind so they could tell the future, give different prophecies, all that kind of stuff. But at our site, we had that fault line. But I don't think gases came out of it. But I will say a lot of these sites are built on fault lines, and there's some speculation as to why they did that.
The sacrificial table. I mean, do we actually believe that it was for sacrifices, or like when I was a kid and I went there and thought about it, I was like, could it be for rain collection, water collection?
Well, then I read
it does that too. It does do that. Yeah.
Oh, what's that, Lauren?
And then I read something it could have been used to like press cider.
Yeah, I mean, it could have a lot of different things. People say it's an embalming table. It's a birthing table. It's a sacrificial table.
Okay.
It's just a stone altar for ceremonies, a slaughter table. And the one about the birthing, the NERA logo, if you know NERA, they have a logo that they chose in 1966, and I have all the paperwork on that because they formed in 64. They chose their logo, and the logo is of the same bell shape as our table, with a person with the legs spread, with the arms down by the waist, with something across their neck, and they're laying on their back, and the left foot is a circle, and that's where the runnel is that comes out of the groove. It goes into a runnel, it goes off the table, and it's a cutout in the bedrock. It's in that same exact spot. It's almost like somebody took a Polaroid picture of somebody on the table and brought that back to, it's in Shutesbury, Massachusetts. It's called Mount Mineral, and there are chambers there. And there was a hell spar in the 1800s, and it is today, but there's ancient stonework there, and one of them is that anaglyph. It's a raised carving, and NERA used it for their logo.
Where in Massachusetts?
That should be in make sure I get the right name again. It's in Shutesbury, Massachusetts.
Shutesbury, okay.
Shutesbury, okay. She's from Shrewsbury.
Not Shrewsbury,
Okay.
but I think it's Shutesbury. Yeah, I always get them mixed up,
I knew she was like in her head, like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the NERA logo looks like, and it looks like if it was to scale, I know my friend L.A. Mazzulli, he's into the Nephilim. He writes, L.A. Mazzulli does a lot of that TV. He's been to our site many times. He lives on the West Coast in Melbourne. But anyway, he was excited when he saw that too, because if this was a woman on there and she's giving birth, or, with her legs spread the way they are and everything, she'd be about a 9 or 10 foot woman, So it made the people that were interested in giants quite happy, because the table is almost 9 feet long by 6 feet wide, roughly bell shaped, with a groove. We said that groove was rectangular. And 10 years ago, we were filming our late David Stewart Smith, who was with us for 40 years. He was our professional stonemason. He had doctorates in historical anthropology. When he was young, he went to India. He was into music. He was into culture. Then he went to England. He started working for the British government. Today, it's called English Heritage. But back then, it was the ancient sites, whatever it was. He worked for them for several years, rebuilding medieval and megalithic sites in Scotland. And I think he did some in England, too. And he started with us in 78. When he returned from England or from the UK, he came back and he's like, oh my God, they got stone structures in New England? And he left. He didn't know that, So he was with us for all these years, and he did our video it's a 2016. I call it the new video. It's 2016 now. And he was doing some takes by the table, and he mentioned the groove being 4 by 6 feet. And I went, he stopped the camera for a minute to do another take. And I said, Dave, how would you measure that groove in the center? He goes, yeah. So the next day, I was a little bothered by the 4 by 6 mentioned, and I knew it was roughly that, but I went up and measured it. It turns out that the groove is not rectangular. It's actually a trapezoidal shape. It's 9 inches narrow at the top and the bottom. And that was kind of interesting, because since Goodwin's time, we called it a rectangle. We did LiDAR in 2020, handheld LiDAR. The gentleman is Tom Elmore from Connecticut, Suffield, and he has GeoNav company. He's a landscape architect. He started LiDAR 6 years ago. He called me up. He wanted to bring up his handheld high resolution $50,000 handheld LiDAR, and it can see down to a centimeter. We started doing the chambers and everything in 2020. And once he did he had to come back several times to do all the scans, And when we did, we looked at it on the computer, 1 terabyte of information. We started looking at the other structures. We started finding that the chamber ruins, which has a roof slab fallen in, he was able to climb in there and scan it. The patty chamber, this area called the courtyard, which is where the patty house sat, a wooden house set over what we think was an ancient courtyard. And right next to the table is an alcove, and it has 2 little niches in it, right next to the sacrificial table. We used to call it the animal pen. All 4 of those are trapezoidal floor plans. And more recently, we went to a structure in Plastow, New Hampshire, where my son's wife's mother, she's a lawyer, and she's a photographer, a drone. She's a lawyer, but she loves photography. She does all sorts of beautiful, at our site too, but weddings and all of that stuff. So at her house is sitting by the Plastow chamber. It's on their property, coincidentally, another coincidence. And we've been going to that chamber since the 60s. Well, we finally measured it 2 years ago. We found out that the floor plan is trapezoidal also. I'll throw that out. I think if farmers were building these structures, they would use 90-degree corners, make rectangles, make squares.
Right.
We're finding trapezoid. And anybody out there is doing any work like this. And there's a nice picture looking from the astronomical platform, which you can't see because you're standing on it, looking south towards the sacrificial table.
Yeah.
And it's about a 4.5-ton stone that came from where you're standing, the photographer. It comes from right below their feet. There is a cutout in the bedrock below the wooden platform where that stone originally came from. It was moved about 40 feet, set up on 4 legs. As you can see, you can see 2 of the legs. That slab is orientated east and west. And on either side of it, you can see monoliths from a big, wide one there, and then one beyond it. These are big. This is very megalithic looking, and we've been all around Europe, quite a few times to see these sites, and it doesn't look like a farm to me, or a cider mill. And you mentioned the cider press. People have claimed that. Usually they're about a foot above the ground. This one's about 30 inches to the top of the stone. And how would you get your horse in there with your wagon of apples? I got a friend.
I mean, it's crazy. And you can literally see the grooves. Like when you're there, you can see the grooves around it, and where it's just amazing.
It is, yeah. I think it's probably one of the oldest stone, constructed sites, possibly in North America. You always find something older, of course, but it's also a high concentration where the other structures, like in the Hudson Valley, they cover 4 counties: Westchester, Orange County, Dutchess, Putnam County, and there's about 500 structures. But you might get in your car and see one, drive down the road and see 2 together, and you know what I mean? They're kind of separated. This is like a high concentration. People think of it as like a village. I think it was ceremonial, maybe a ceremonial village, but not where people lived. I think they gathered here and they buried people here. They did ceremonies here. Not a village where you lived, I don't think. It's like Stonehenge. They didn't live at Stonehenge. They lived near it, but they didn't.
It had a purpose.
Absolutely, sacred. I think a sacred site.
So I have a question for you, Dennis. I have to ask: have you personally had any paranormal, cryptid, or UFO encounters?
We have had. We've had not only a lot of experiences come to our site, including Betty Hill. She was a friend of my mom's, and Bonnie and Betty Hill. Yeah, she joined us in '74 when Hans Holzer was coming up to do all of his work.
Oh, wow.
And Hans Holzer started in '70. He was filming us from '70 all the way up. And then 1992, he wrote the book about us called Long Before Columbus. And you can get that book in 1992 on Columbus's 500th anniversary. And it's all about us. And it talks about bringing Ethel Myers, Nancy Abel, and it was Ingrid Beckman. And that was over the course of July 12th, I think November 12th, and the other one I can't remember, but my mom used to go up to the Manchester airport because Hans lived in New York City, originally from Austria, but he came up, and my mom would pick him up at the airport with whoever psychic he was bringing at that time. And Ethel Myers came in, I think it was November 12th, quite cold. And we got pictures of her standing by the North Stone astronomical alignment with her rain jacket, hat on. I think she had like a clear bonnet over, keep her head dry with an umbrella or something. But the neat thing is Betty Hill heard about this somehow, and she came over and she wanted a reading by Ethel Myers, And when the Holzer Files did their thing on us in 2020, David Schrader, I've been on the show years before. I knew David, and he did the show for a couple of years. I wanted Hans Holzer's daughter, Alexandria, to come up and visit because she did it out of her home. The other ones came up, including Cindy, what's her name? She's from, and she's from New Hampshire. She's from Ashland, I think, up near that paleo site. And she never heard of us until she showed. She says, I live in Colorado, and I never knew about you guys. I'm from New Hampshire, So that's so typical. People don't know about us. But I said to Alexander, I wish they could, and I told the producers, the 3 different producers from California, she'd be cool to bring her up here because her dad came here over years and years, and we went out to eat with him. They were friends. So what happened was on the middle of they were shooting for a whole week at night, and I was ready to head home at 10 o'clock because they had to run the place during the day. So it was like burning candles all week. I was going out the door. I said hi to one of the staff, and she goes, hi. I said, oh, hi. I didn't know who she was. She goes, I'm Alexandra Holzer. But she has a married name. I'm like, oh, my God. I said, I knew your dad and everything. She never came to the site before. He would not bring the kids. So anyway, I did talk to her. I said, do you have the tape? Because I think where our office was today is where we changed the whole building around, added onto it and everything in 1994. I said, I think your dad may have had something on tape with Ethel Myers with Betty Hill, because they have all the pictures of them together in our visitor center. You can see Ethel there, you can see Betty Hill, you can see her gray head, you can see Hans, my mom, and all the other people there. Kathleen Marden, she's big on UFOs, her niece. Kathleen was one of the high MUFON people, and she lives in Florida. She came to our site. I've talked to her since, talked to her just last year, I think it was, and she used to come up with her aunt, And so Betty, Betty stayed with a friend of my mom's until I think 2003 or whenever she passed. And I was listening to either Art Bell or it was George Norrie back then. I can't remember. So I was heading, I think, to go to work at Logan Airport to fly, and I hear a good friend, Betty Hill, passed away last night. I'm like, oh my God! And my mom lived until 2019. She was about just a couple days shy of 100th birthday. So she was friends with Betty for, I would say, all that time, maybe 30 years, probably, roughly 30 years, I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Small world.
Just go to their house. Yeah. Small world. So paranormal, I've seen my own things up there. My wife has, my son has, although they don't like talking about it. I've heard kids' voices up there, just walking my dog up there and expecting to find a bunch of kids on the site because we live right by the property. I walk up there. My neighbors keep an eye on the place for vandalism, and just because we love the place and I love walking up there, I hear these kids' voices, and I've heard this a couple times. I get on top of the hill expecting to see kids running around up there. I'm going to be kind of ticked off because it's trespassing. We've had vandalism. They should not be up there, and we have an admission when we're open. Neighbors shouldn't do that. That's disrespectful.
Right.
But again, kids are kids. We were all kids at one time.
Yeah.
I get up there. My dog doesn't react, and she's sensitive. If she hears a pine cone drop right now outside, she'll bark at it. She barks at everything. She did not react to it, and I heard the kids' voices. I get up to the summer solstice sunset stone because we live on the northwest side. I'm walking up the hill to that. I can see. I'm like, okay, I'm going to see the kids, and I can see the main site. I'm looking, nothing. 5 minutes later, I'm walking over to the main site. Okay, they were in the oracle chamber. They're hiding. Nothing. I walked all around the site expecting to find kids cowering somewhere or whatever. Nothing. And I walked around the whole property. And you can see now, because we've done a lot of, you wouldn't recognize it. You can see a long ways. And then another day I'm up there and I heard kids. And we've had the East Coast paranormal people, Lynn and Willie. And they used to do their own radio shows too.
Oh, yeah.
And, Lynn and Willie, they're great. And she's got the kids' voices too. She's written about it, and in fact, she wants to do another thing up and do a little documentary on that and maybe interview, because that kid like I said, sounded just like kids. They're right ahead of me. I'm going to be ticked off, and I don't want to be like that. I want to be happy, but these kids should not be up here. And, we had bad vandalism in 2019. So it kind of, it hurts a bit, sensitive, sensitive to that. Yeah. So that's our experience. Yeah. We have UFOs. We've had cubes over the site. I've seen my sighting out looking to the Hampshire airport. February, 9 o'clock, about 4 years ago. I'm in our sunroom. It's a Palladian window, a very tall window looking towards the west. And I learned to fly in Hampshire Airport. I know it well. I learned to fly there in 74. I'm looking at bright light. And I said, well, it could be a landing light. I can't see any strobe lights. I can't see any rotating beacon lights. I can't see the logo light on the tail. It may not even be an airline. It could be a corporate jet, or I don't know. But this light looks pretty bright. I'm watching it for about 3 seconds. All of a sudden, it goes instantaneous straight down to the ground. I mean, just like that. I asked Kathleen Marden about that. Have you ever heard of it? Because there's really no big bodies of water over there. She goes, yes, Skinwalker Ranch and the reptilians. That's all I can say. And I've seen 4 different UFOs, but I flew for 30,000 hours, including I flew on UPS on the 727s back in the 80s. And I talked to a lot of Vietnam vets and some Korean War ones that hadn't quite retired at that time. And they had a lot of interesting stories. We saw things because we did a lot of night flying with UPS out of Louisville. And I even flew. But I would say you couldn't really determine okay, I see light, it's gone. It could have been a landing light turned off. It could be a cloud in front of, it could be a ground light. But on the ground is where I saw all my unusual things, like 4 different things, and including one where Betty Hill grew up in Kingston, New Hampshire. My wife and I saw it. My wife's not really a believer. She saw it about 5 years ago, and all the way home, she kept looking. It was the strangest thing. If we had time, I'd tell you about that. So I have seen a few things. But over our site, I've seen a couple over our site here. So including a cube, one of our visitors brought up, she was coming with her mom, riding around the hill to get here. And she was so excited. She showed me it. She sent it later. It was actually a cube right over our site, a cube.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
It's in our computer about 6 years ago, and I have lost it since. I don't know how you would ever pull something up. It was in an email, going back. I don't know how you do that. Yeah. But yeah. So yeah, some interesting things nearby. Sure. Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow.
Okay, so one of the other things that I saw on your site is that you have a kids gemstone dig. Is it just like what does that
Yeah, it's
entail?
yeah. So we use that. It's a big area that we have, and we salt it with gemstones. And kids have shovels, they have sifters, and they can go in there with buckets, and they can load it up and sift and find little gemstones they can keep. When we have school groups, we laid out the grid of strings, 1 meter by 1 meter, and we divide it, like that,
So cool.
and we put kids, and we salt that more with artifacts, broken pottery, simulate, not ancient pottery, of course, but more broken stuff.
Right.
We broke a piece of pottery here. I'll bring it over there and put it in there. And we put in some things like, simulated arrowheads, because we do sell the simulated. They're actually not relics, they're replicas. And so we give them an archaeological introduction for about 10 minutes, talk about archaeology and what's going on in our site and other places of the world. And then we team them up in two. They get into the meter squares with their buckets and trowels. They work as a team. They'll come out to the sifters. They'll sift. And we put in the little shiny little stones in there. That's something they can take home with them, But we recycle all the other stuff, the broken pottery and all the, what you would call junk, and we resalt it. So we have it laid out as both an archaeological dig when school groups come, and then we pull the strings down for daily kids gemstone dig. And the kids love it. They don't want, sometimes they're reluctant to get in, but then you can't get them out. So we know they like it, and the parents have a good time with that too. And we have alpacas there, part of the North American camel family. We've had some since 2002. And they were here from 43 million years, their ancestors, up to about 8,000 years ago. And I was at one of the mounds out west, I think it was in Alabama, Moundville, one of those mounds. We did a big tour 2 years ago around all the way out west. And they had a skeleton next to all the pottery and beautiful, artifacts. And I'm like, that skull looks interesting. And I got up to it, looked at it. It was a llama skull and had been found there. And so they had branched into the llamas probably about 1 million or 2 million years ago, and they migrated into South America. So we had llamas on this continent, right in the United States, right near some of these mounds. That's so cool. And so our alpacas are part of our ancient past. So that is the south-facing chamber. And some people pointed out about 4 or 5 years ago that it looks like a turtle profile with the head being on the left. The belly is where that flat lintel stone is. Above that lintel stone where the chamber is, you can see the bend top of the shell, like it's kind of curved.
Yeah.
And then the legs on either side. And on the very right, there's like a little stone. It's like a stone on the very right that would form a tail. And we've been looking at that. We don't know, but turtle was huge. And is that a chirp? That thing's been damaged, and we have the original photographs. It's kind of back to where it was back in Goodwin's time. It had some damage from whatever, but it kind of does look like a turtle profile. And I looked at that thing from 1955 or whatever, all the way up to like 5 years ago, and I never looked at it like that. I always just said, well, it's an interesting self-facing chamber, and there's something like that in Ireland. I've been in Ireland, and they look kind of like that too. You call them sweat houses, but
that's what they think.
We really need to go back during the day.
Yeah, she needs to actually during the day and enjoy it.
Please do. Yeah. I think October and September are the best months, to come up.
But the funny thing is, anybody who knows me knows that I am a klutz.
Yeah.
I mean, I can trip over a blade of grass with no problem.
I usually expect 911 call that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I expect
I didn't call once, guys, not once.
We'll have them on standby because you'll be looking at the structures, and it's very uneven. It's uneven ground with some roots and stuff. We try to make it as safe as possible, but the bedrock's kind of uneven. So people sometimes do that. They're taking a picture, and all of a sudden, the next thing they're on the ground. Doesn't happen very often. That's the east-west chamber. That's kind of in the middle of the site. In the very background, you can see a wooden structure. That's the astronomical viewing center. But you can see the bedrock there, and we have photographs of that with a young man standing right in front of that, right inside that chamber in 1920. We have four pictures from that era, and that's one of them. Yep.
Yes.
We sat inside there. We actually have a profile picture of us sitting in there.
Sky. Okay. Yeah. And that's where the earthquake fault line runs right in front of that. So you can't see it in the picture, but it goes right across the entire hill.
Oh my God.
And it goes out to the glacial cliff shelter 1,000 feet away where we found pottery. And the fault line is out there too. You can see it in the glacial cliff. But that looks like a gallery grave or gallery graves I've seen in France. They're in Holland. They call them the Giant's Bed, the Houdendidden. Okay. And they're also in Northwest Ireland, which we never got to. And they were used as tombs, ancient tombs like that. You can see how it's all sitting on bedrock. There was some dirt on the ground there that's been cleaned up since Goodwin's time, and a lot of. I apologize. My dog's barking for some reason. I apologize.
That's your pine cone fell.
she's barking at the spirit. Yeah, the pine cone now, I guess. Yeah.
No, but
I apologize.
In the picture that we took in that room, we also used our cell phones, and we did like the SLS camera kind of a deal. And
okay. Yep.
had someone standing
There was a figure
in between us.
Yeah.
Oh, did you get that on camera?
We've got it somewhere in one of the files. Yeah.
I'd like to see that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we have one in the patio area of looks like these guys are so excited. It looked like a person standing in the patio area. It was kind of like a misty, but it looked just like a person, the whole profile. And we had it up on the wall for a while in the visitor center so people could see it for a number of years. We did some remodeling and it came down probably over 10 years ago, and I haven't seen it since, unfortunately. But it was pretty interesting. I think. Well, that sounds interesting. I'd like to see what you got there. Hans Holzer, when they did it, they used his camera in the oracle chamber, and they revealed a person standing in the entranceway of the oracle chamber. It was like a profile. It was pretty. I know the hairs on the back of my neck stood up when I saw that on the reveal on Friday night when they showed me it. They actually used his camera because Alexander brought it up, and that's the one he used back 50 years ago at the site. Well, that's the biggest serpent, we think. That is the watch house, and that's the first structure you see when you leave the visitor center. And so the boulder is a glacial boulder.
Okay. This is LiDAR, right?
This is LiDAR, yeah. So it's that $50,000 handheld LiDAR. It looks like it's an aerial shot, but it's not. He was actually standing on the ground, and you can zoom around like you're in space looking down. It's amazing, So that's the watch house with the chamber. You can see the white quartzite stone inside the chamber. Chamber does go in there a ways and around the structure. It's not huge, but the boulder actually, I think, is a head of a serpent looking at you, and it's a glacial erratic. It's natural.
I can see it.
But I think the ones in Connecticut, they got the same thing. Sometimes they're stacked heads, but sometimes they're just boulders, and they look just like they were created to be a serpent's head. Well, in front of it is the pointed tail, and that pointed tail is pointing right at you, right in front of what would be the mouth. Yep, and to the right of the head, you can see a wall. And I didn't send you the other picture, but that wall, it goes off 2,550 feet. And what you can't see in that wall, because it's not in the frame, is the wall goes up and down these humps, like the back of a serpent. It goes up and down, up and down. They're out of the frame, unfortunately not in that frame. And they go and they touch every astronomical alignment. Where the sun sets over, like the winter solstice stone, that's part of the body. The body goes around, and it comes back from the left. And it comes from the left, and this is not the greatest picture. Actually, it does a beautiful hump on the very left frame of the picture. You just see part of the hump. And then it goes right in front of the face of the serpent boulder. And then it does a 90-degree twist with a tail pointing at you, kind of.
Oh, wow.
Some suggest that we have 3 possible Ouroboroses at our site, which is a serpent biting its tail. Sometimes the tail's in the mouth. That's the most prominent, or the most common type, I should say. The one with it on the side like that, if you do the Ouroboros, you look it up, some of them come up just like that too, and that was a surprise for me. And the Ouroboros could be an ancient symbol by Greeks, Egyptians, and I've seen Native American artwork with it biting its tail too. It can mean different things to different cultures, but sometimes it can mean like wholesomeness, the circle of life, infinity. If I didn't say wisdom, that's one of them. But there is another line. That's the same handheld LiDAR, but it's overlaid with some of the astronomical alignments. Not all 57, but it shows you the solar and lunar. It does not show you, I don't think this one here, I got it on small scale. I don't think that shows you any of the star alignments, and it doesn't show the illumination is one of the illumination in the watch house is fantastic, actually, but that is some of the alignments. And the one on the left, it goes down to the left. That's the winter solstice that Warren Martell opened up in 1965. By 67, it was open, and that's where you get the winter solstice sunrise. So all the others are later on research.
Tom is asking if we visit the site, would we be able to meet Mr. Stone?
I'm there most days. Yeah, I'm there pretty much. I work pretty much 7 days a week there. We try to go off on a little vacation here and there. We just did a 3-week down south, and we got to see one of the shell mounds near Crystal River. We've been to Crystal River mounds, which are fantastic, and we got to go out to Alabama and stuff. So yeah, I'm usually there. Yeah, I mean, if we do away, either a day trip or we go away for like a week or something, just because we work 7 days a week. And so I'd like to retire. We try to retire a couple times, a year, which is fun, So because I worked for. I flew for 42 years, 35 with the airlines, and then I'd work at the museum on my days off, so always working 7 days. But I love being there, and we found so much over the 90 years, and we keep finding stuff too.
What about the future of the site? Like after you've retired, do you have someone take over as a steward for you guys? Is there another family member or whatnot?
Yeah, my son. I only have one son, Kelsey. He's an engineer too, like my dad. He's Raytheon, and he worked for a couple of different companies, L3 Corporation, but he went to school for engineering and everything. And he's got his hands in the place. He just did all the displays inside the museum over on his days off. Usually has like a 4-day week and then a 5-day week. And the 4 days, sometimes he does things like go skiing on Friday, but that day he also tries to come over to the museum or Saturday and do some renovations, whether it's in the building, and he's doing some stuff outside. So he's kind of our future. He's a third generation, and I have a granddaughter. She's 5 now, and she's in preschool, but she's over there quite a bit too. She's growing up with the place, like I did and he did. We also have a manager, James. He started in high school. He's been with us since 2018. He went to school for, he took up law. Criminal law, I guess, in school. He got his 4-year degree, but and he was with us in high school through that, and then he was going to go into law enforcement. And in his junior year, going into his senior year, he said to us, "I'd like to work for you guys." He'd been with us, I think, 4 or 5 years by then. He goes, my wife goes, "You would like to stay with us?" Because he was summer help, and we actually really loved him. He was we had some really excellent workers like Warren Martell and others too over the years, but and this guy was just great. And when he told my wife that, I'm like, wow, this is our future, I think. So now he's working on his graduate in history and archaeology. And I mentioned he's doing stuff with our state archaeologists, and he's doing digs, and we've been doing a few digs at the site. So he's kind of the future with my son. My son and my daughter-in-law works the Hill. She's been with us since 2009. She was going into engineering too, but she met my son in college, and she's been with us, and she's part of the future too. So that's a great question. You always worry about that because you see a lot of restaurants and businesses, and really well loved by the community. The family no longer wants to do it, and it closes. It's like, oh no,
all the work and effort that your family has put into this for all these years and everything. You want to make sure that it keeps going and is maintained and developed and researched more. Yeah, you've written some books, right? You've written a couple books.
Yeah, my daughter-in-law, Kat, we put together, I mentioned my daughter-in-law, Kat, in 2018, we put together a new book. It was a souvenir book, and it replaced a 1996 souvenir book. And so I think I'm holding it up here, but yeah, that's our souvenir. And I think I sent you pictures of that too.
Yeah.
And so when that book came, that was kind of easy to do, photographs, and little descriptions. It was a lot of fun to do, but then we decided to write a real book starting right after that. And this took 5 years to do. We finished it in 2024, and it came out on the spring equinox at our place. And Scott Walters happened to be doing an event. I think it was a 2-day event at our site or whatever. And my book had just come out, and he was out there while I was doing I had to do my presentation in the theater, and then he was going to do his, and then we had a couple other doing them. And so he was outside with his books, and he was hawking my books, which was kind of fun. So anyway, this is my book. It's when the place first opened, the business actually, there you go. It was called the Stone Ruins of New Hampshire was the original name of it. And by 59, we changed it to Mystery Hill Caves. And by 63, the word caves confused a lot of people. They thought they were natural cabins or caves, so we dropped the word caves. But in 1982, America's Stonehenge. And the Saturday Evening Post, actually, 1959, called us America's Stonehenge because of the big stones. They didn't realize we had any astronomical alignments like Stonehenge. That name, and you go back to 1939, a newspaper called us the New Hampshire Stonehenge. So it kind of almost like it's preordained or something, or it's meant to be, or fate. So we changed the name in 1982 to America's Stonehenge to reflect the function of the alignments. The form is different than Stonehenge. It looks more like other megalithic sites, which are 50,000 in Western Europe. But the megalithic sites are in every continent except for the Antarctic. They're in Africa, they're in China, they're in India. If you Google megalithic sites in the world, they're in South America. And if we didn't have them in North America, it would be unusual. But we have over 800 locations, we think. So But America Stonehenge kind of fits the site. Some people like the old Mystery Hill, we called it, and that's the name of the hill actually.
That's what I grew up with. We always called it Mystery Hill. Yeah.
Mystery Hill, and people still do. Yeah, and that's okay. That's a compliment. And the USGS, I think in 1968, started calling the hill Mystery Hill because it never had a real name. It had nicknames, Patty's Hill, named after the family that was here. A lot of different names, but it became officially Mystery Hill, and that name is still. That's what and it's right behind where I'm sitting because we bought land in 1985.
Oh, that's so cool.
Built a house. So we live next to it. My son lives over here. He moved from my dad's house next to us a little bit closer. And we abut the property of the museum, and we can ride our ATVs. We can snowshoe up there or whatever.
Oh, that's great.
So right behind us. So keep an eye on the place, and we're right at.
Have to.
Yeah, I used to commute down to New York City every week for the airline because they closed my Boston base for me, and I was like a whole day just to get to work, do a 4-day trip. And my wife goes, when you get done, you're going to have to get a cab from New York, from Kennedy to LaGuardia to get home on a flight, and I love flying, but that was 8 years of that. I'm like, Louisville was kind of tough too, but that was only every other week. So this is an easy commute. Just go out there and we're at the yeah. Even in the bad weather, I can get over there. It's easy. It's an easy commute. But congratulations. So I'm so honored to be on your first show. This is first for me. This is wonderful.
It's gone so well. We've gone 20 minutes over. I hope you're okay.
Oh boy. I owe you 20 minutes on the next show. Then we'll do 40.
No. It is an honor. I mean, the knowledge that you have, and just we want to get people to go there. We want to get
thank you so much.
Get there. What's your website? What's your contact info? Let us know.
No, thanks so much. Yeah, so our website, we've had it for almost 30 years. It's StonehengeUSA.com. And if they go into that website, there's a free mobile app they can download. They can do a complete virtual tour of the whole site you see normally on your phone and your lazy boy or your couch at home. And also the 11-minute video we have in the theater. I mentioned David Stewart Smith on that too from 2016. Yeah. Eventually have to update that again, but you can watch that too. And you can see if it's something you're interested in, and if you do the virtual tour, that can take maybe half an hour to how fast you zoom through it, And if you come when you come up and visit us now, you can use your phone, and as you're walking, it has pictures, text, and it talks to you as you walk. We give you a paper map too, just in case your phone dies.
It's a guided tour.
It's like a self-guide. And then we do VIP tours. Like James right now is doing most of the VIP. It's by reservation. It's about a 3-hour tour, and there's a special fee for that. It's like behind the scenes kind of thing. And he takes you all over some of the other acreage, circuit walls, windows, and that's a special thing.
We may have to do that.
I think we have to.
We might have to do that,
yeah, you got to come up. You're not too far away, probably 2 hours away or something. That's not bad.
About 2 hours,
So, the other question I have is, how can people help preserve this American treasure, like volunteering, donations?
Probably all this. Yeah, we do have volunteers, and sometimes people will donate money, especially if we do like dating. We've done OSL dating, optically. In that, we did fund a couple of them. They're $1,500 per sample, so there is money involved with that. We just did some radiocarbon dating recently, and that's $700 per sample. We've been doing that since 1967, actually. But just people's interest, visiting is one thing. That's how we stay alive, having the interest there. Have the people come up and see the site because it's self-funded, basically. And just be aware of these sites. They're all over the Northeast, and if they have any way of, like if people are going to go in and put a development in, and they have all the hearings in the town, and there's a chamber. Some of the people here some of the developers have been pretty cool. They've actually preserved the chamber. They built around it. Like Danville Chamber in New Hampshire, the developer was the Lewis family. They have a beautiful country club too, but they build houses. And I talked to the guy one day about, we bought some of he has a farm too. I bought alpaca hay from him. And I was talking to him on his tractor. He's passed away since. And he goes, oh, the chamber in Danville? I said, oh, yeah, the Danville. He goes, well, we owned all that land. We're developing it. But what we did is we set that piece of property with a chamber and we preserved it. And I said, well, isn't that a win-win? The town's happy with you. You got the build and we have this chamber. And I said, thank you so much for that. And they did that in Raymond, New Hampshire, and a couple other places, I think, in New England too. So that kind of thing is really important to preserve these structures. People can still build, but if they can just kind of, but the other thing you have to be careful is some of these have chambers, have big stone roofs, and it's a liability. Well, but they've worked it out with the town and with insurance, whatever. But we'd love to see these things preserved and also not vandalized. That's another thing. That's a problem too sometimes. So,
okay, great. Hey, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Final question, Lauren.
Oh yes,
One
we
last
have
final
one
question.
last
Oh, one
question.
question.
A personal question to get everyone know about you a little better. So
Okay, so
hypothetically,
you're on death
Hypothetically, yeah.
row. What is your last meal?
What was my last meal today?
you're on death row.
You're on death
Hypothetically,
row.
Oh, on death row. What was my
what's
last
your
meal?
last meal?
Boy, can it be dessert?
Anything you
Anything
want.
you
It's your
want.
last
Oh,
meal.
I think
Money's
I'd take
no
a hot.
object.
I would love a hot fudge sundae. I think. I mean, there's so many other foods that I would love, but I think maybe it goes easier in my stomach. I think, and I'm on death row too, right? So
Yeah.
I think a hot fudge sundae would be good, just a way to finish it up, you know.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds great. Yeah. So
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
thank you so much.
Yes,
It's been
thank
an
you.
honor to have you on our show, and
Oh.
we've learned a lot.
Yes.
So and people
Yeah.
can learn more. Go there, check it out. They need to go. They need to see this place.
It's
Physically.
Oh,
amazing.
thank you so much. Yeah, and it shows like yours that help to keep these sites alive. You know, our place as well as the other places. And we'd love to have you come up anytime. We're open every day except Christmas and Thanksgiving. And if you ever wanted to do maybe like, I don't know if you do like an on-site podcast, you know, that's something a
We can
few
do
people,
that.
not as many, but people have mentioned that. We've done a couple, not too many, but that's something that would be kind of fun too, you know, a lot, you know,
Right.
if we could do that, you know, something like that, that'd be great.
Again,
Well, thank you again.
so much.
Yeah, and congratulations on your new show and many, many, many more shows to go.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. It was
Yeah,
fun.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great evening now. Thanks.
You
All
as
right,
well.
you as well.
Thank you.
So that was episode 1. We got through it.
We
And it was
did.
amazing. I mean, we couldn't have picked a better first guest.
Oh no.
I mean, it was just really the info. It was
Mhm.
wow. Yeah, I was like, I want to go tomorrow, but we have other plans. But so it's like, oh man, we're going to a different Salem tomorrow.
Yes.
So it's like,
Yeah.
that was wow.
Most definitely. It was
So,
very, very interesting.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for those who called. We got who we could get on.
Yep.
Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let us know. If you didn't, well, we're not Dan and Lauren. We're Homer and Marge. If you didn't like it, so that's how this works. And
And I know you're watching, my little one.
if you liked it, let us know, and we'll do another episode soon with a very special guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.